I mean, as far as like just the man, like the guy,
Yeah.
I mean, what do we know? Like, did he grow up? Does he claim to grow up in a Christian family, a Christian environment? Does he identify as an evangelical Christian? I'm a
Uh,
little,
yeah, I
you
don't know
know,
if he would say he's an evangelical.
okay,
He definitely identifies as a Protestant. He did
Protestant Christian. Okay,
talk a little bit about kind of flirting with Catholicism at one point, but um, he's, I think, distanced himself from Catholicism. I think surprisingly, I think maybe unsurprisingly, the reason why my sense is the reason why is he's rejected natural law, and I think that
okay,
natural law is really difficult to reconcile with his personal lifestyle, for one thing. But I also think that his technological sort of interest, his interest in technology, also preclude a willingness to be restrained by natural law. I think he wants to let the tech go where the tech will go.
yeah, okay. And I want to get to that. I want to get to that in some more substance here as we sort of maybe set that up. Now, as far as the personal lifestyle, and I think this is relatively well known that he's an open sort of practicing homosexual, right? I mean,
Yeah,
that's
you
kind
can
of
go
what we're
on.
talking about, right?
Yeah, you can go on his wiki page, and
Yeah.
it gets into that.
Okay. All right. We don't dwell on that, but that's probably where obviously a lot of his conflict lies. Um, okay, so he does claim some kind of Christian belief, I guess. I won't go so far
Yep.
as to say faith, but belief. And obviously he's you when you guys did the podcast, the theology podcast, when you made the point that he's very well read in
Yeah.
sort of the canon of Western literature. Um, and that I would say he reads the Bible, right? I mean, he's
Yeah.
into
Eh,
the Bible, we might say, right?
Yeah, he knows the scriptures
Yeah.
really well. I think he has got a very uh, broad, but at the same time um, informed take on Western Christianity. He's able to, off the top of his head, discuss the various periods within the history of the church. The room was filled with uh, Protestant and Catholic intellectuals, and they were grilling him, and he was
Mm,
very comfortable and was
mm.
able to respond just kind of from the hip, shooting from the hip all the way along. I don't think there was a single question that he was asked that he was flustered by or didn't have a meaningful response to. You wouldn't necessarily agree with everything, obviously, but it
Right.
wasn't like he was just making stuff up or pretending he knew things he didn't know. He's. I mentioned to some folks that I've known a lot of pretty sharp people, and he's definitely in the top 10 of the people that I've come across in my
Yeah.
life in terms of intellectual um, acumen. Yeah.
Acumen. Yeah. Well, I mean, he's incredibly successful, so I guess it
Hmm.
makes sense that he's got the mind,
Yeah.
kind of that
Yeah.
steel
And
trap like mind, probably, right?
yeah, he was also a clerk, Supreme Court for a Supreme Court justice. He studied under some really significant philosophers.
Mm.
He's definitely Rene Girard has been a big influence on him. So is Leo Strauss. So he's I mean, he's even read Rushduni. I mean, during the course of the lecture, he mentioned reading Rushduni, and he said,
Yeah.
he
Okay.
said, there's, I didn't agree with much, but there was one book he really liked. He liked Rushduni's book on education, public
Okay.
education.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. Because I mean, I've never read Rush. I'm familiar with him, but that he's a
Yeah,
fairly esoteric character
yeah,
in the
that's what I'm
Christian
getting at. I mean,
in
this
the
is
history of
like,
theology, right? I
yeah,
mean,
this is like a third tier
it,
person,
yeah.
maybe even a
Right.
fourth tier.
Right. It's interesting. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, okay, that's good. It's interesting to hear that about Thiel. I have a friend, close friend who has met him on several occasions. Um and reminded me as I was writing my article like that he knows everybody and he's been everywhere
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
kind of the way he said it. Like so
Yeah.
his influence and this is I mean I guess this is also where part of my concern lies because kind of you said like the last two lectures were like maybe a bunch of guys in a dorm room with their Bible going through Revelation. And like,
Right.
if it's just a bunch of guys in a dorm room with going through Revelation, it may be one thing. But when you got somebody like Peter
Yeah.
Thiel going through Revelation,
Right.
I start to get a little more, nervous, maybe.
Yeah, he's certainly taking things in heterodox directions. I mean,
Yeah,
his read on the Antichrist, his read on the Catacon, his read on Armageddon, they're all his own personal kind of quirky reads, and so
yeah.
now that doesn't mean he hasn't read other people and isn't aware of sort of prevailing schools of thought. He's he was fully conversant on amillennialism, premillennialism, postmillennialism, all the different little schools of thought. He just quickly would run through things and say, this is what this group would think, this is what this group would think. He was right. So, but he's got his own take. I even think when he refers to himself as a Protestant Christian, he's got a very particular thing in mind. I don't think it's necessarily what you or I would say is sufficient, but he's got something in mind that he thinks makes him a Christian.
Okay. All right. Well, okay, let's dig into the views then that he's presenting, which again, they weren't just in the lecture. I mean, they're
Right.
there in the First Things article. It's like a 12,000 word article. So
Yeah.
it's a fairly long piece. And then of course he's got the hour long interviews, hour and a half long interviews with Duthard and Morgan that people can watch. But so I don't know where to start here. Maybe we should start with his view of this kind of idea like of Armageddon or apocalypse versus Antichrist, and how he's sort of like conceiving this choice that is being forced upon us, or something forced upon humanity.
Yeah. So I think that kind of in the background, or definitely in the background, when he's talking about those two matters, Antichrist and Armageddon, is his understanding of the Christian schema when it comes to history. So he says, he makes a very strong point, and it's an accurate observation, that prior to the triumph of Christianity throughout the world, there has been a cyclical understanding of time. But with the triumph of Christianity, we have a linear view of things now. And that linear view has made all sorts of things possible, including technological progress. And I think that is his major interest. That's his major. I think that's really what he believes in, and that's why he believes he's a Christian, because he believes in that linear understanding of history, and that we are making progress in certain respects, and we need to keep pursuing certain things in terms of. He refers to that passage, was it Daniel 12, knowledge shall increase, right? So he sees that as very much part of the larger Christian story. And he's very much a Baconian in terms of his way of thinking about how that gets played out, particularly when it comes to the material world and our exercise of dominion in the material world that we find ourselves in. So I think those things all come into play. And what he thinks is really, I think when he says Christ, he's thinking about progress. He's thinking about that.
Like the Messiah is sort of this more concrete process.
Yeah, I would say that's certainly part of it. I'm not saying he doesn't have any room in his thinking for transcendence, or for a two-tiered understanding of reality being, spiritual and material and that kind of thing. But definitely he thinks, he didn't say it this plainly, but I couldn't help but think this is what he was getting at, that really the story of progress is a story of Christianity. And anything that gets in the way of that is Antichrist. I think it's what it boils down to. He didn't put it that way. So let me give him some space so that if he ever hears this interview, he can correct me. So he didn't say it that plainly, but I wonder if that's So I'm going to do a little bit of what he did. So, if you're familiar with Straussian readings, basically there's esoteric, people say things, but they mean something different.
Okay,
So
right.
his read of Bacon's New Atlantis is
Yes.
is Straussian. He says this is what Bacon had to say because he was in a world that was so largely controlled by the church.
Right.
But this is what he meant.
But he was really, so he was, yeah.
Right.
I mean, this idea that in the New Atlantis, he's using Christian symbols, language, terms, metaphors, in part because if he doesn't,
Mm-hmm.
the civil society around him will, he'll get tarred and feathered.
Yep.
And maybe also in part because that's what people understand. That's kind of what their linguistic register is. So he can get his point across and keep himself sort of safe.
Mm-hmm.
But then the underlying meaning is something far different from an Orthodox Christian.
So,
right.
So this particular read of Bacon is not unique to Thiel. I mean, I've come across other people who've interpreted him in that same way, but insofar as I'm doing that with Thiel, I'm saying that he's using a register of language, sort of a set of terms in a particular way that is not the standard way of understanding or thinking about these things. But so when it comes to this question of the Antichrist and Armageddon, what Thiel is afraid of, and by the way, I share this fear to a degree. What Thiel is afraid of is that people are going to be so spooked out by the new tech in all kinds of areas, not just artificial intelligence, but bioengineering, all that kind of stuff, that they're going to be ready for someone who comes along who's very charismatic and has an ability to secure a lot of support to shut down technological progress and get a monopoly on that technology by the government, not just in the United States, but more broadly. So he's really concerned about, say, international courts, international law, all that kind of stuff. And you can see it, kind of like you could say, what's going on in the EU right now, and with a lot of these things is sort of like the skunk works for the legal kind of sort of measures to control tech. So he thinks that what we could find ourselves doing is backing into a kind of global shutdown of technological progress because people are afraid of what that technology makes possible. And paradoxically, what they're going to do is hand over all that tech to a totalitarian regime.
Oh, okay. So, because others, and I want to say, I haven't read Paul Kingsnorth's book, but I did read that. He wrote that really good article a couple of years ago for Touchstone, the AI demonic one.
Mm-hmm.
And other people that I've seen sort of writing. I mean, the one idea would be it's through the tech that sort of Antichrist comes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we'd be concerned about the tech or whoever is, the tech itself sort of ushering in some kind of Antichrist. But he's saying that we'll be maybe rightly afraid of what the technology is presenting as an option, but that somebody will come along and promise to sort of put this big halt to it all, but then wind up getting control of it. So it's still kind of the same thing at the end of the day, that the technology gets sort of placed in the hand of a single totalitarian leader or some kind of global corporate group, right? But it gets used then eventually to sort of for control.
Yeah, I think the big difference between Peter and Paul, this is kind of fun, Peter, Paul, and Mary. We just need Mary now to kind of round it out.
Fit her in.
But so I got to know Paul Kingsnorth a little bit. So I've had a chance to interact with Peter Thiel and Paul Kingsnorth, and the big, there are many differences obviously between the two guys, but I think a significant difference is Paul is coming from a world, but maybe it's just because he's not up to speed. Maybe it has to do with the fact that he's in the UK, or he lives in Ireland now. But for Paul, he doesn't really see the private sector as capable, or doesn't see this private sector as really independent of the governmental sort of kind of control
Control and
that
management
yeah
and government.
that Peter Thiel fears. So I think Thiel, because he's a libertarian, he really does think about the private sector as being free, as not completely free, but it has a measure of freedom in the West, at least in the United States, that we don't see anywhere else in the world. Certainly not in China. But so the sense I have is that Peter wants to preserve that freedom, and he sees the United States in particular as having an important role in maintaining that freedom. Now, obviously, the private sector needs to work with the federal government, particularly on defense, and that's where we see Thiel actually going these days with this, businesses Palantir and Anduril. But that I think I think Thiel genuinely believes that the private sector is a check on governmental overreach, and so long as the private sector is able to continuously kind of upset the apple cart when it comes to new tech, that'll prevent the federal government from, or a centralizing government from getting a grip on a society that's totalitarian.